Hey everybody, it's Aaron here with Robert, and welcome to Get Your Geek On's review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Yes, the third Ant-Man movie. All of them have been directed by Peyton Reed, and of course, it stars Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, Michael Douglas, Michelle Pfeiffer, and we've got a couple of newcomers: Catherine Newton playing Cassie Lang, and Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror.
Yes.
We're going to start off non-spoilers and then go into spoilers. So we'll start off, not really spoiling anything and just initial impressions. We saw the movie last night, Aaron. What'd you
Yes.
think?
Um, hmm, what did I think? What did I think? So, because we talked a little bit about this after
We did.
we kind of always end up doing that for a few minutes.
Yeah.
It was good, but I had some iffy parts to it, which will be in the spoiler part of it all. But overall, I think it was a good movie, an almost popcorn watch type film. As I don't think this is a spoiler, it does somewhat connect to everything, and at the same time, it doesn't. So it's almost like you can jump into it and watch it as a standalone. If you do, you'll enjoy some of it, but there's things if you watch the other Ant-Man films, to an extent, I guess you only really need to watch Endgame because that's the only three movies, and then Captain America versus Iron Man, Civil War. If you watch those
Eh,
four movies, you pretty much don't need anything else in the MCU because that's kind of the only references we get, and that's it. And even then, you don't need them. So again, it's a popcorn, this isolated film that I enjoyed. Would I watch it again? Maybe. I don't know if it's going to be a go-to, but I think we said it last night. It was my favorite of the Ant-Man films.
okay. Yeah, I think for me, I probably would say I liked it a little bit more than you. I thought it was a lot of fun. It
Mm-hmm.
definitely has some issues and some plot holes and things like that, and I'm sure we'll talk about a couple of those. But I had a good time. I thought, the Ant family, the Pims and the Langs. I enjoyed all of them
Right.
and their relationships with one another and kind of the what we saw of them. I thought it had some really cool visuals that built on not just the quantum realm stuff we'd seen in the other Ant-Man movies, but also on a little bit of Doctor Strange in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like how they showed things. And also, Jonathan Majors as Kang, I thought was awesome.
Oh,
He was a great villain, and so
yes.
that was something that really resonated with me in terms of like how much I was enjoying it, because a lot of times Marvel, they tell good stories with their heroes and we can enjoy them, and then they switch over to the villain story and perspective and it's kind of like and for this one, anytime he was on screen, I was fully engaged. I was really enjoying
Mm-hmm.
what he was giving us and the layers he was providing to that character. And so ultimately, I had a really good time with this movie. It is definitely my favorite of the Ant-Man movies. I think the first one's kind of a fun breeze. The second one's not really my favorite.
Right.
Maybe it falls victim to when it came out. It was in between Infinity War and Endgame, and it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, this is not the movie we want to see at that stage.
Right.
So maybe that colors my enjoyment of it. But this one, I will say, you talked about it not necessarily making a lot of references to past movies, which is true. But I think what this movie is doing is really it lays a lot of groundwork for I think where we're gonna go.
It
Um,
does.
and so in that sense, I don't know that it's an important movie to the previous saga, but it feels
Mhm.
very important to what's coming next.
And
That's kind of my thought.
maybe that'll change my mind as the next phase starts moving forward, that we'll see more of how this is going to play into it. And maybe that's the whole point, is this is supposed to help separate everything and be like, okay, our next journey, because I mean, we saw Kang a little bit in Loki. We got like
He Who Remains. It
he
was a
who
variant.
it's still Kang.
That wasn't
he
Kang.
who is
This
he
one
who
is name
remains.
dropped as Kang.
Kang the
That
Conqueror,
one, that
yeah.
one was He Who Remains. So
So a variation of Kang was seen,
a
and
variant, yes, for sure.
now we're connecting it. We're connecting some of the TV, a little bit more of the TV to me, to everything else. WandaVision was kind of like we both said we didn't like Doctor Strange. I'm not even gonna go there, but this one kind of seemed to tie into it a lot better to me and introduced some other stuff to it, because again, we got to see what that Kang, that version, Hugh shall remain, was worried about and talking
Yeah.
about. And we
Mhm.
got to see that in this Kang, who was literally, I'm just going to murder everybody and I don't care. And I enjoyed him as the villain. I think honestly, he is so far probably one of my favorite villains. He had enough backstory that it gave me
Mhm.
some like, okay, I'm interested and I'm intrigued. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm curious on to know as to why he's more of this cold-blooded killer versus maybe a
Well,
different Kang,
yeah, I
but
think we'll maybe explore that further. We'll see.
exactly. And that's all set up. And I mean, this actor, he just knocked it out of the park. That menacing up, like even just coming in the room where there's a scene where you have Ant-Man and his daughter, and just the way he walks in there, it's like that he has a powerful presence.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the costume mixed with the actor, if it's just the actor or what, but it was like, oh yeah, I need to pay attention to this guy. Like, I need to hear what he says. And it wasn't the whole like I'm just gonna the trope of I'm laying out all my plans in front of you. No, I mean I am, but I'm also not minding like killing all y'all. Like that's fine by me.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about this more in spoilers because it was really powerful. But I
Right.
will say one of the things I appreciated about this version of Kang is there's no sense of insecurity within him.
No.
He is very confident, and so it's not necessarily um that you talked about like villains revealing their plans. There's just a level of arrogance there where he goes like, this is what's going to happen, and
Yeah.
so whether you go with me or not, like this is how it's going to play out. And so I appreciated that about him, and we'll talk more about it in spoilers. The other thing I wanted to talk about before we get to spoilers is
Mhm.
just in terms of Ant-Man movies have generally been lighter in tone. They've been funny. They've
Right.
had a lot of humor in them. And so this one, is not quite, it is a different tone. It is more serious in nature. But it still
Mhm.
had plenty of jokes and plenty of humor and things like that. So
Right.
I wanted to ask you, how did you feel the humor worked? Did it work for you? Did you have any
Mm,
moments where you really laughed out loud, or was it just some chuckles, or was it like, nah, this isn't landing for me at all?
For me, it was just some random chuckles here and there. I think it wasn't like the aha, because I heard you laugh a couple times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, they hit harder for him than they for me. Mine was just like, that's funny. Like I didn't get that big joke that it was just like, oh yeah, ha, ha. And it's just like, oh, cute, funny reference. All right, yeah, that's not wrong. And I think the humor still did hit well because at the end of the day, a lot of it was also smart ass humor. Like
Yep.
I think, and it's not gonna give any spoilers away. The table scene where they're all eating. Oh, you should go write a book. Oh, and they're just picking at him. It's like, oh, y'all are jerks. Like that one was making
Yeah.
me laugh a lot on the inside because I'm like, that would be me and my kiddo. Like I could see us all doing that, just being jerks to each other like that.
Well, and I,
And
appreciated the callback at the end with Michael Douglas and his army of ants, where they kind of like, oh, is that what you're doing? Like so
yeah,
there was a callback to that, like, you never talk about this, kind of like joking thing. And so yeah, no, that was a joke that worked for me.
that one probably hit
It's
the hardest
it's
for
in the
me.
trailer. They've got that joke about him being Spider-Man. And
Yeah.
so that the way they tied that back at the end of the movie made me laugh. I chuckled at that as well. Yeah, so I think it's not as funny as either of the first two Ant-Man movies,
Yeah.
mainly because, slight spoiler, there's no Luis. There's
That's all there.
no
You
Michael
need
Pena.
Luis is to make
And
it
that
funny.
that was missing for me in terms of like an element of the first two Ant-Man movies that I think works really well and is a great framing device. And I think they could have worked it into this movie. That is one criticism that I have, is this movie does include voiceover, and it's Scott's voiceover. He's
Right.
providing some story. And I think that was a missed opportunity. I think we could have used Luis as him telling a story, or something like that. I
Yeah.
don't know exactly how they would have done it. It would have had to have been a little bit different than what they did in the previous two movies, where he's like
Mhm.
doing voiceover of other people talking and things like that. I don't know if that would have worked within this movie, but I just felt like there was a way we could have had some storytelling from Luis in
The
this movie.
the end of it would have been the perfect way to do it. So we get it a couple times. I think the second time we saw it would have been perfect because it could have been Luis talking to somebody and he's talking about like what Ant-Man's thinking, and throughout the film, and then it's like you have the pause where he pauses. I'm not gonna say everything, but it's like the pause, and he's like contemplating, and Luis can be like, "Yeah, he told me this, that he had this real thought, like all of a sudden, and just rambling, and then you do a
Yeah.
pan shot, and it's him talking to maybe like what's her name that's making the Thunderbolts? I can't even think the actress's name now.
Oh, Julia
Um,
Louis Dreyfus.
yeah, Like you can see like them two
No, I
talking
don't
at a
want them. I
table.
don't want them in a scene together ever. I don't
Oh, I
want
do.
Louise talking to her.
I want
No.
to because he's going to be himself still. But like, if not her, just somebody. Maybe he's trying to impress a girl or something, whatever. Like
Yeah.
that would have been funny to do it that way. And I think that's maybe what this film is missing for me is him.
Well, and that's one of those things is, you just mentioned like, so it's in universe and this has been revealed in marketing and stuff. Like Scott writes a memoir in the
Right.
movie and it's like going to be available in real life in like 6 or 7 months. Like they're releasing the memoir as Scott Lang's memoir,
Right.
which is crazy to me. It's Marvel, it's whatever. I'm not going to buy it, but I'm sure
No.
somebody will. And they're also I think we had in Miss Marvel, the TV show, they reference him like being on, he has like a podcast where Scott Lang talks to other celebrities, and that's the type of thing where I think that's exactly what they could have had, is like Luis either on Ant-Man's podcast or on somebody else's podcast, like talking about his relationship with Ant-Man. Like I think you totally could have had it in that
Right.
type of style and it would have worked really well. So, again, that was missing for me. I did think, this movie had really good action, had some fun visuals. I really liked the final showdown and confrontation. I thought that worked really well, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about why in the final spoilers when we get there. But I thought that worked really well for me. So yeah, I mean that's kind of, before we get to spoilers, that's my overall thoughts on it.
Right.
So what are your kind of final thoughts, and then we'll roll into scores and then spoilers.
I think my final thoughts still stick. It's a good film. I recommend someone. Oh, so my friend I brought with me, like she said herself, she's like, I don't think I've watched all the MCU stuff. And she had asked me, what should I watch before this? And I had told her, just watch Ant-Man 1 and 2. And you should be fine. I think I don't know if she rewatched them or not, but she had made a comment that she did, like she had seen them. And I said, just rewatch those and you'll be okay. And it was fun to see some of her reactions because I don't think I don't, we haven't really talked about like all the movies and stuff. She's not a hardcore fan, I'll say it that way.
She's not a
So
nerd like us.
yeah, pretty much. She has been in her own way. So we're sitting there. This was after the movie had ended, and she was asking questions about like, okay, so as we're sitting there as the movie's ending, she had some questions that I can't say yet here that I'll say in a minute. But I already screwed that up. So there's a edit gap right here, guys. You'll see that. But yeah, so she had questions about it. It was kind of cool to see someone who hasn't possibly been as invested as me and you to go through it. And she enjoyed it. She enjoyed the film. She thought it was good. But again, you don't need to watch all the other stuff. And I think that's kind of where my point's proven with her. You don't need to watch it. I said it's a good film. Enjoy it with some popcorn and have some fun just watching the adventure of Ant-Man.
There you go. All right. What is your final score? We usually do this out of 10. So what score out of 10 are you going to give Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania?
I will give it, again, it was probably, for me, one of my favorite Ant-Mans. I think probably the better of the Ant-Mans for me. So I'll give it at least, I can't remember what we rated it before. I think I'll give it at least a 6.5 or a 7, somewhere around that area.
Okay.
So what about you?
I'm going to come in a little higher. I think we've already talked about that. Things worked a little. I think the humor worked a little bit better for me than it did for you. Maybe the action worked maybe a little bit better for me than it did for you. Maybe the story worked a little bit better. So it's just slightly up. I'm going to give it 7.5. I had a good time with this. I think that ultimately this is probably my favorite Marvel movie since Spider-Man No Way Home, that's only a few movies. That's, I like it better than Doctor Strange Multiverse. I like it better than Thor Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
I had a better time with it than I did with Wakanda Forever. That might be a better movie. It's kind of hard to, like, they're
different
probably
styles
at about the same level in terms of, like, how good they are. But in terms of my enjoyment, I had a better time hanging out with Ant-Man and having fun than I did hanging out in Wakanda and kind of traveling through trauma and grief, which it's important. Like, that's an important movie, but it wasn't like rah entertaining in the same way that this movie is.
And I want to touch on that real quick. Those are two completely different movies, guys. So I could see how your scores could be the same for different reasons.
Yeah.
So if they're both 8s or whatever, it'd be like, or in 7.5. I can't remember what we rated.
It was somewhere around there.
But yeah, they are very different. So if you really truly enjoyed Black Panther, Don't expect that from this. You're gonna
It's
get a
very
lot
different.
more,
Yes.
Funny, like heartfelt kind of stuff, like just
Which I
joke.
like. I like getting
Yeah.
different flavors in the MCU. So, anyways,
Yes. So
let's roll into spoilers.
hopefully you stuck with us and you're now here for the spoiler part. And I'm gonna finish that conversation I accidentally started real quick.
Yeah,
So
the part you had to edit out.
yeah, the part I had to edit out. So if you're still here, definitely now we're in that spoiler territory. My friend who went with me had so many questions at what the mid-scene credits. I want to talk about those two post-credit scenes first too.
Sure. Okay.
The first one being the mid-credit scene where we see Kang Ramatut. We see, I believe that's Kang 3000. I think he's from the year 3000. I can't remember. And then we see, I can't remember the third one's name. They actually all have a little bit of a unique name to them. And then we see the Kang dynasty, the Council of Kang, essentially, where all these Kangs are being teleported into what looks like a gladiator type arena. And I don't know if it's the way they're going to judge of who's going to be the next Kang to rule them all or what. But my friend was with me and she was like, "Who is that?" I was like, "It's Kang."
What's
She's like,
happening?
"What do you mean?" I was like, "It's all the same guy. It's different variations of him or different variants. It's almost, he
Right.
goes to timelines and he grabs himself out of that timeline and then he works with himself. The true narcissistic megalomaniac that he is, that's what he does. And then he betrays himself at some point or another. So
Sure. Yeah.
that scene
So
was just where she
it's
got
the
confused.
opposite of Loki, where Loki betrays himself immediately. Kang takes the long route.
Yeah, he takes the long route because he needs him. He needs Kang to get to where Kang wants to go. So that's where I will say, if you haven't watched everything, you kind of might miss it. So you need definitely watch, I would say, at least Loki for that scene.
Yeah.
And
Both post-credit scenes.
Post-credit scene, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course the last scene we see was a straight up season 2 tease for Loki.
Yes.
I was excited
Yes.
about that. And we see what I'm assuming is the original Kang, maybe. I don't know.
I think it's this same version that we get in this movie. I think that even, I don't think this version died. I think it transported whatever happened to him at the end of it, transported him to this, because I don't think we're losing Kang the Conqueror. The Council of Kangs thinks he's dead. That is very clearly stated in their scene. They call him the exiled one, and they believe that he has died. But I don't think he has. I think we are going to get this same version back, and I think that's him. Now, he might be stranded and trapped in that time period, or he might just be messing around in that time period. I don't know. But that is my opinion. It's certainly not definitively stated, and that could be incorrect. I just feel like we're not going to lose the one that we specifically name dropped as Kang the Conqueror, especially when the end title reveal is not, it's similar to the Infinity War, which was Thanos will return. This is Kang will return.
Kang, yeah. But which Kang, we don't know.
A lot of other times we've seen, Thor will return, Ant-Man will return, Captain America will return. This is, I think, the only the second time we've seen the tease of the villain returning, because it was Thanos in Infinity War, and this one it's Kang will return.
Exactly. And that's makes me wonder if, like, you are correct, if it is this Kang, or it could be any Kang, because it doesn't say Kang the Conqueror. It literally just says Kang.
Yep.
So I mean, I'm curious where that's gonna go. So the post credit scenes were probably, for me, some of the better ones we've had in the last few movies.
Yeah,
I will say that.
Okay, so I agree with that. I want to dive into Jonathan Majors and Kang.
Yes.
Because one of the things, and I touched on this in our non-spoiler part, but one of the things that was my favorite thing about him is that, like, obviously there was we get the backstory of him, like, meeting Janet Van Dyne and working alongside her, trying to repair his ship. And then she finds out that he's, going to conquer everything once it gets repaired. And so obviously he had kind of hidden that portion away from her. But after that point, he does not hide who he is from anyone. And I love that scene you referenced where he's walking in to confront Ant-Man and his daughter.
Oh my God,
and he just basically says, like, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. This is what you're going to do. And if you don't, this is what's going to happen. And he starts torturing Cassie. And you're like, okay, like, he's not hiding that he's a villain. I think there was a lot of speculation that, is he going to trick Ant-Man into thinking that he's actually a good guy? And I love, like, his initial pitch. It's kind of like, he doesn't say I'm evil, but it's kind of like, I need you to do this thing for me. Do we have a deal? And Ant-Man is like, no, we definitely don't have a deal. You're an evil dude, and I can tell. And he's like, you're right. You should have accepted the deal before I start torturing your daughter. And
Exactly.
it's like, oh, like I was so on board with that approach where he's just
That
like, this is who I am. And I'm not
yeah.
going to hide who I am because it doesn't matter if you know who I am. I am Kang and I am the Conqueror.
Exactly. And I also do like that whole scene. We get the hint that this Kang has killed all the Avengers at many times over.
Right.
Because he even looked at him, he's like, are you the one with the hammer? I've referenced that he's killed Thor himself.
Absolutely.
I mean, and this is the guy who can take down the Avengers at any point if he wants to. Now, this also goes with the whole, which version, how many has he killed, which versions, win, which ones don't. It's a whole wibbly wobbly timey-wimey thing. But I do like that we get that reference that this guy is not someone to screw with. And I like that we get that because, we already all saw Endgame. We've seen Age of Ultron. We've seen all these other Avenger movies. And we're like always rooting that, yeah, they always win. Not always. They may have always died. And this was the one universe they have been winning in. Right. And I think we got it, of course, with Doctor Strange seeing 14 million, blah, 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 blah. And now we got Kang like, okay, I've killed you guys too. And I love that whole, like I said, that was probably my favorite scene. But at the same time, it also has a character in there that we didn't even touch on in a non-spoiler one that I did not felt like he was supposed to be there, which was MODOK. I do love that they keep commenting what his name stands for, and I was like, okay,
organism designed only for killing, which
yeah,
I
so
did
MODOK.
like. I did like that joke as well.
That would make me
like,
chuckle. Actually,
that's MODOK.
That would make me laugh because I was thinking about that too. The whole time they kept saying it, I'm like, where's the F? Because I never thought about the F. And then he says the joke. I'm like, okay, like you said the joke too, because I would have done that. I would have done that same crap. But see, like that whole character, I want to comment that I hated him. I actually hated that character.
Okay, so I'll let you expand on that in a minute. And this is what I'm going to say. I thought MODOK was a good inclusion, and I thought that the way they used MODOK was good. The fact that it was Darren Cross from the original movie, that's the part that didn't work for me. I think that it just needed to be someone different, and they could have had a different backstory. Having that personal connection between him, Scott, and Cassie, and even Hank and Hope as well. Like that part did not work for me, and the way they ended his storyline, which again we're in spoiler territory, with him kind of making the heroic decision, that did not feel earned, and it did not feel warranted. And I feel like it would have worked better if he had just been some quantum realm individual who had been maybe rescued and basically brainwashed into being MODOK by Kang. And it's not until he encounters Cassie and all them, and like you can have it still play out very similarly with Cassie kind of delivering this heartfelt, like you can make a different choice, you can choose to be a hero instead of just being designed only for killing, like, and kind of giving this character who's never been exposed to that an opportunity to make a different choice. And I think that would have worked better than trying to shoehorn in this previous character. So that to me was what I didn't like. Him actually like flying around, murdering people, like doing all the action beats. I thought that all worked well. I just didn't like the fact that it was the same guy from the first Ant-Man. I don't know. Did that cover the same things you don't like about it? Or?
Yeah, I mean, and it's true because I mean, it's cool that's him, but I would like to, if it was him, I would like to kind of see maybe one that was already brainwashed. Like he doesn't even remember who they are. And maybe I could be sold on it more. Like he's coming back around and he starts hating them, like, because he's remembering like what they did to him and all that. And maybe the conversation, instead of it being with Cassie, is with Hank. Like, why didn't you pick me? Like he remembers everything finally. And they almost have like a heart to heart. And that's what turns him around and says, you know what, man, I'm a dick. Like, whatever the case may be. Cassie's trying to sell it didn't work for me at all, because Cassie is Scott's kiddo, not someone that he would have had a connection with. And
well, I mean, obviously the reason they did that is they set her character up from the very beginning of the movie as she's the one that is going to choose to help. She's always going to see the best in people, and she's going to choose to help people. And so this was another opportunity for her to do that. And yes, their connection was he tried to kill her when she was 6 years old.
But and he didn't know who she was. So like I would have been sold better if it was like like say she was Hope's kid because he's been around Hope for years. He was, been around Hank, seeing her grow up those 6-7 years before he died. Well, we think he dies. Then
Yeah.
there's that connection of like, oh, I miss you. How you been?
Yeah,
Where
that's
this one was
really,
kind of like,
they had one interaction in a bedroom and he tried to kill her.
yeah, but he was still talking to her like friendly, and I'm like, you literally tried to kill her, and there's no connection for you to her. Now she's in a, I don't know how old they're saying she is. I'm guessing she's like 18, 19, maybe 20.
Yeah,
Um,
something around there.
so now she's an adult, we'll say, or close to an adult. I'll say it that way.
Yeah, I'm trying
And
to think. The first Ant-Man came out in 2015, and I think this is supposed to, Endgame is supposed to be 2023 in terms of a
that's
timeline.
8, so that's
So
14.
that's supposed to be 8 and 14. So add on however many years this is
2-3
supposed to be
years,
now
yeah.
after Endgame, 1 or
We'll
2
say
years. So let's say
young
16,
adult.
17,
Yeah,
something in there. Yeah.
close to young adult age, where it's like, okay, she's there. There's no connection. Like, don't be a dick. That was her whole thing. Oh, okay. Well, it's
I
not going to be
guess
a dick. And
nobody's ever told me not to be a dick before.
yeah, like really, no one's ever.
It's
Okay,
like,
whatever.
you've been a dick your whole life. You were a corporate bigwig. I
Yeah,
guarantee someone has told you to stop.
and you're telling me this little girl who you have no connection to, that's what changed you around. That's why I think it bothered me so much with this character. Again, I think I agree with you with the whole, if it would have been a whole nother person who was brainwashed, maybe, and maybe that person was connected to the rebellion that's there, and like he sees somebody and that starts fixing the brainwash, that would have sold for me. Or like I said, I would have been okay if it was him, if it was Hank, because again, Hank didn't raise him, but Hank helped get him where he was supposed to be at the beginning of Ant-Man 1. And I think that would have been a better connection, where he was brainwashed, he gets out of it, it's still the hatred, but maybe he doesn't go for Scott anymore, he just goes for Hank, because he's like, I hate Hank. And like he's kind of disobeying Kang or going against his orders because he wants Hank. And then they have a heart to heart. Then it's like, I am a dick, and then turns around. But
I think
just
there
didn't
were a
like
few
him.
different ways to utilize that character that would have been
It would have been so
better
much
and more
better.
interesting.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you, what did you think about the, other people that are populating this quantum realm, the people that are like, the resistance, the rebellion, or even like the people that are kind of in this, society who, are just subjugated, I guess you would say, by Kang. They're just trying to like live their life. And that guy, did anyone really stand out? Did you, really appreciate anyone, or was it just kind of like their background characters?
For me, every single one of them just felt like a background character. I didn't have any connection to any of them. They had a couple like little small one-liners that were kind of, that's funny. Like the guy that's his head's a laser beam, essentially. Let's torture them. That's all he kept saying. And the guy with that could read minds is like, really? Like, we have other ways of doing it? Because that would have been me. Like, okay, I'm a jerk. Him, maybe I kind of liked the one that
Yeah,
could
I was
read
gonna say
minds.
the mind reading
Him,
character, and I can't remember the actor's name, but he's from The Good Place.
oh, okay.
And that, which is a really funny show. And I
did
thought
all right.
I thought he was an interesting character, and the way that they used that was good for some jokes, and also for some more serious stuff, and just ways to like streamline the plot a little bit, where you can just say like, we don't have to have this long drawn out thing.
No, here's a mind reader.
It fits. Okay.
He was okay.
I
What about you?
I feel I agree. I liked him, and I did like the female character that was like the head of their kind of group.
She was okay.
I thought they worked, and her interactions with Cassie, especially when she's like breaking her out, like that was fun. I don't know that the emotional beats, they didn't really like, because the laser beam dude that you mentioned, like he dies, Kang kills him, and I don't know that the emotion really hit as strong as they maybe wanted it to, because we maybe just hadn't had enough time. But I thought it was good enough. Like, they weren't the focus of the story.
Right.
They didn't drag the story down at all. I thought they kind of served their purpose. And there were a couple memorable characters. Like I said, I think those two that we kind of identified are probably the two that stood out the most to me.
Right. And I think, again, I enjoyed his, and hers was okay. But I think at the end of the day, for me, I won't remember any of these characters. They had no significance to the universe.
I don't remember their names at all.
Yeah. So, and that's what I'm wondering, though. Like, and maybe that's why I can't connect with them, because I don't think we're ever going to see him again. I think this is a one and done.
Yeah, we'll see.
I don't anticipate them coming back. So I want to kind of shift everything with my huge flaw. I think you said he had a plot hole that was kind of big, and I didn't think about it.
Yeah,
And then
there's two kind of
let's go with
big
those first.
big gripes that I have.
Go with yours first, and then I'm gonna because
And
mine
they're
will be
tied
around.
together because they're
Okay.
both around Janet. And the first one is that we find out this backstory of Janet, that she met Kang, and at first, he said he was like a traveler, a scientist who'd been stranded, and if she could help him fix his ship, then he could get them both out of there, and he could help her get back to her family. And so she's helping him. And then once they fix the ship, she discovers that he's actually Kang the Conqueror, and is determined to not let him escape, right? But she's also terrified of him. And she spends the next however many years, and they keep throwing out like 30 years, 30 years, 30 years. And which, number one, like they kept telling us that time works differently in the quantum realm, but apparently not for Michelle Pfeiffer. I don't know. Like that's a weird thing to me, where it's like they're referencing the exact same amount of time. Like it should have been like I was there for 1,000 years, or it was only 3 months to me, whatever. I mean, like they should have done something different with that. But anyways, so she spends all this time, 20 years, 30 years, however long it is, fighting him, in fear of him, knowing what he's capable of, right?
Right.
And so that's a big plot point in this, is that she's terrified of being back in the quantum realm. She's terrified that they're messing around with the quantum realm, except that at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, when they've gotten her out, and they've used some of her energy to like heal Ghost, that's something that they're doing. They are sending Scott back into the quantum realm to collect more of this energy to, help people, and, to help Ghost more and things like that. And like, why is she okay with sending Scott back to the quantum realm when she knows that Scott's, that Kang is in the quantum realm searching for any way to get out? And the technology that Scott has could help him get out. And so it's a major plot point that doesn't make any sense. And the other piece that was really frustrating was her unwillingness to tell her family about what was going on. And you could chalk it up to being scared and her trauma response and all that stuff. But ultimately, all she was doing by not telling them was putting them in dangerous situations without the knowledge they needed. And, so it was really frustrating to have her be like, we just have to go. We have to get Scott. And, and it's like, but you could talk while you're walking. Like you can tell them what happened while you're walking.
No, we can't do more than two things at once.
And I just like, and it's a movie trope. It happens in all kinds of movies where it's like, I can't tell you about this because they want it to be this big reveal later.
Right.
But ultimately, it just doesn't work from a character standpoint, where you go like, no, I'm pretty sure she would tell them immediately what they're up against. That is what the character of Janet Van Dyne would do. And so it's really frustrating to have them do something different, because we want to have the big reveal scene with Bill Murray's character where he can reveal that she's known this Kang, and and it's like, no, that should be coming from her. I don't need this big scene with the most obvious guy who's going to backstab you in history, Bill Murray. Literally like, this is Marvel's version of Lando Calrissian in The Empire Strikes Back. It's like, I used to know you when you were a scoundrel, but now you're wearing a cape and you're a good guy. No, he's not a good guy.
It was the
reason he got a cape in this awful like society is because clearly he's sold out. He's a bad guy now.
I'll be honest real quick before I go on my rant. I didn't care for his character at all. I thought it was a pointless waste of time for me.
I agree.
And that was a waste. So, and I agree, when you said all that the other night, when you kind of commented a little bit about the plot, I was like, crap, he's not wrong. And see, so I think this is why the movie falls flat for me, though, is there's nothing at stake. We get the whole fight with everything. It's like, oh, these people might die. Kang's coming over. Nobody at the end of the film loses anything.
I disagree with your statement. There is a lot at stake. Kang just doesn't accomplish anything.
I mean, maybe
that is the frustrating thing. If he gets out, he'll conquer the universe. Like he is capable of killing all these people, but he doesn't make the choice to actually do it. Like I wanted Janet or Hank to die.
I wanted somebody to die. I wanted loss, because at this point, Antman hasn't lost anything. He's basically gained more at the end of the day too. If you think about it, he's now has a better relationship with his daughter. He has co-parenting, obviously, with his ex-wife.
Right. With
He has,
Hope.
I don't
Well,
know if him and
yeah, with his ex-wife. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if him and Hope are married. The way they kind of talk makes it almost sound like it, so I don't know yet.
They're probably
But
living together,
yeah, but they're together. He has a
serious. Yeah.
family, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay, where's the loss? Where's the heartache that a hero has to go through to keep moving forward and to show that even with through loss and tragedy, you still can be a hero. He doesn't lose anything, like you said to yourself, the whole where Janet makes the portal, we have to hurry. 20 minutes fight scene later. Oh, okay, we can. Oh, it doesn't get closed. It only gets closed because Kang got knocked into it. And then it's like 2 seconds later, Cassie opens it back up. It's
Yeah.
like,
And what was the original plan? We're all gonna leave and just leave, this
Kang
thing
just
that
is
we
like,
this thing that we have been like the whole movie saying Kang can't get this, but we're just gonna leave it there while we
we're
get
gonna leave it
back to
there.
our
He's
universe.
just gonna be like, thanks, guys. I mean,
Again,
like, no one.
they're if you examine it
It's
too closely,
yeah.
a lot of these plot points fall apart,
Oh
which is
yeah.
why I was just trying to I'm just enjoying it. I'm having a good time. When Hope steps back through the portal and starts shooting Kang, I'm like, all right, I'm on board with this.
Yeah.
Like, this is working for me. And I did like that his suit got damaged, and so it really turned into like just a fist fight. Like, he didn't have his technology at the end.
Right.
Because if he did, he would have just
Oh, yeah,
snapped his fingers and
Yeah.
killed, the ant family.
And I think that's my problem though, is that there's no loss, and I wanted to see something change. Like, again, I think I made the comment to you, an Armageddon scene where we can't close the portal from this side, someone has to stay behind, and maybe Scott goes and he's like there with Hank, and Hank's like, not this time, and then shoves him through, like, I'm gonna do this. Like, you Hope needs to live out there, she lost that time, let me sacrifice myself, and destroys the machine and dies there. Or maybe Kang kills him afterwards, or he lives and tortures him, who knows.
Something.
So, but on that note, guys, we're going to end it here. We've been ranting for a minute. So let us know what you thought about the movie down below in the comment section. If you liked it, you loved it, what spoiler did you like? What character did you like? Who did you miss? Because I know Robert missed a character.
I did. I miss Luis, but it's still a fun movie. I had a good time.
It was good. It was good. Check us all out at official GYGO on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok, all that good stuff. And until next time, I'm Aaron.